welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Maria and this week I'm going to be doing a reading vlog, and I've decided to pick up some of the popular BookTok books that I have at the moment. And full disclosure, I don't have TikTok or anything, so I don't have BookTok, but I think the same type of books kind of circulate around bookstagram and booktube as well, so decided to pick up some of the more popular ones that I've had on my shelves for a while, and some of them are a little bit newer as well. So the first one I'm going to pick up is The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli, and this one is a newer release. I think it came out in around March time, and I've just heard really great things about it. It seems to be getting really good rave reviews. It's a YA novel, but even so, a lot of people are saying that it's a really good one to pick up. But this one, it follows our main protagonist Rune, who is a witch, and this is the fairyloot edition, so it does have the pretty sprayed edges as well, and it has some art under the dust jacket that you can see as well, so it's a really pretty edition. And I think in the US this is called Heartless Hunter, which I'm not really sure why they had to do that, but it is quite confusing. But yeah, this is basically called the Crimson Moth series, but in the US you'll see it as Heartless Hunter. I'll put the cover on the screen here just so that you know which one that is. But yeah, basically the premise of this one is we have a witch called Rune. Rune is part of a revolution because in this land a few years ago there was a rebellion where basically the witches were being arrested, killed by these hunters who are, I believe, the Good Guard or the Red Guard, something like that anyway. And one of the witches that was caught was who she deemed as her grandmother. Now, they weren't blood relatives, but she was brought her up from she was very, very young. And essentially her grandmother actually told Rune to hand her in so that she could kind of cover her tracks on being a witch and so that she wouldn't be suspected of being a part of her circle. So essentially Rune did do that. She handed her in, and we're kind of following the aftermath of that now. Now, Rune has since discovered that she is also a witch. So previously she didn't know she was a witch, but after some time she found out she had magical powers. So now she's just kind of navigating that with some friends. She does have some people in her inner circle who also want to help the witches, so she's working with them. We do also get a perspective from Gideon, who is like the head commander of the I can't remember if it's the Good Guard or the Red Guard, but essentially he's the commander of the witch hunters, and he is actually brother to one of Rune's very good friends and one of Rune's inner circle essentially. So it's going to be interesting to see the dynamics of how that goes on. I'm around 10% in at the moment, and so far so good. I'm really enjoying the writing. I feel like it's got me hooked quite early on, so be interested to see if that continues and if I'm still as excited about it after reading it for some time. But yeah, so far so good. But other than that, I probably will pick up a couple of other books this week. Not really sure, depending on my mood. I could pick up either, I've got When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I've also got The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and I also have a few kind of more contemporary romances as well. So Flawless by Elsie Silver. I've never read that, but it gets, you know, again, rave reviews. So there's a few that I could probably pick up off my shelves, but excited to see where the week goes and excited to see if any of these are worth the hype. I have read quite a few of the more hyped books, and sometimes I get burned by it and they're not really as great as I had expected them to be, but sometimes you do find a new favourite. So here's hoping with the ones that I pick I'll find a new fave within them. And if you heard a lot of snuffling throughout that last clip, it's because this one never gives me a minute on my own, and he just has to be beside me when I'm filming. So yeah, you will hear some pug noises as the vlog goes on. hopping on to give the first update for the vlog. So I'm about 50% into the Crimson Moth now, so I have a much better idea of what kind of the premise is and the storyline. But firstly, I'll say so far it's been really good. I think the pacing has been great. You know, there seems to be action kind of in every chapter. I think she's really great at leaving us on a kind of, not a cliffhanger at the end of each chapter, but kind of leaving it where you want to read on. Short sentences where you're just like, oh, I need to know what happens next. And yeah, so I don't think I mentioned before, so it is dual POV. So we get a point of view from Rune, who is the main female character, and also from Gideon, who is the main male character. So just to kind of roll back in terms of what the plot is on this one. It starts off, we're in this land that has basically 2 witch queens, and there's a rebellion around 2 years before the plot of the book starts, and essentially those witch queens are overruled. And then within this land, they start to purge all of the witches or witch sympathizers and anyone that was kind of associated with them. So 2 years ago, Rune was living with a woman who was not a blood relative to her, but she considered her grandmother. Essentially, it was found out that she was a witch, and the only way for Rune to remove suspicion from herself was to hand her grandmother in. So she does that so that she can then be, you know, it kind of keeps her safe and keeps some of the other witches safe as well. Now, before her grandmother is handed in, she asks Rune to help find one of her lifelong friends, Seraphine, as Seraphine has been caught by the blood guard and is being capped, and she is likely going to be put to death. But Rune's grandmother asks her to help free her. So it's been Rune's mission over the last couple of years to help the witches, any witches who are being, you know, harboured or have been caught. She's freeing them from the prisons and from the blood guard. And essentially Rune has access to some cargo ships who go from, the world is kind of like an island. They take things from the island to the mainland, they call it. So essentially she's going to be using those cargo ships to ship the witches from the island off to the mainland. Now, I'm not sure what happens on the mainland, if witches are safe there or if they have to go into hiding. That hasn't been explained yet. And the reason that Rune's grandmother wanted her to find Seraphine is because she knew that she would have information that she wasn't able to give Rune before she was taken. So basically at the time that her grandmother was taken, Rune didn't know that she was a witch. She didn't know that she had magical powers, and Seraphine would be there to guide her. But obviously as she had been captured, her grandmother wanted her to find her. I'm guessing there's going to be some information about Rune's past because it hasn't really been explained why she was living with this woman, just that she was orphaned and she came to live with her. So it'd be interesting to see if that's part of the ending and if we figure out Rune's past and who she's kind of related to and where she's come from. And she's called the Crimson Moth because basically in this land the witches use blood magic. So there's all these different levels of spells, and depending on the spell you can use, you know, your own blood, someone else's blood. If you use your own blood, it's much stronger. Someone else's blood, it's not as strong unless it's taken unwillingly. Unwilling blood can be used for darker spells, but it does have an effect on the witch. So it's not one that Rune really wants to use, and she can't use her own blood at the moment because if she uses her own blood, basically when a witch uses blood for a spell, the scar will heal, but it will be silvery, so that she would be able, if she had scars on her body, she would be identifiable as a witch. So again, that means that her magic is a lot weaker because she has to take blood from others to work her spells. But the reason she's called the Crimson Moth is because she signs off each job essentially with a little moth in blood. So I thought that was a really cool detail as well. But what I've really loved is the dynamic between this kind of enemies to lovers, where they both have hidden identities. They're meeting up both under the guise of thinking they know more about each other than the other does know, when in fact they're probably so close to the truth but yet so uncertain of it. So it's kind of always a tension of, will they find out who each other are? I mean, Rune knows that Gideon is the commander of the blood guard, but she doesn't really know how much he suspects her. So she's kind of playing him as this airhead socialite, as if she's looking for just a husband to settle down with, but really she's wanting to be with him to get information about the witches so that she can free them. He has a huge suspicion that she is the Crimson Moth, but he isn't able to kind of prove it, so he's letting her court him essentially so that he can get close to her as well. You're just always kind of on your toes at the moment to kind of understand if that when they will figure out who each other are, is that going to be the cliffhanger at the end? Is it going to kind of keep us going? But I think it's not boring in any way, even though it's kind of a will they won't they find out type of situation. It's keeping me entertained the whole way through. And another dynamic which is really interesting is that one of her lifelong friends is Alex, who is actually Gideon's brother, and he knows that Rune is a witch. But there's a strange dynamic there where he hasn't told Gideon you can kind of see that he's pining for Rune, but he hasn't, you know, made any moves, hasn't done anything about it, so they're just friends at the moment. And it's unclear whether Rune knows his feelings towards her, but it's very, very clear from the narrative that he's obviously in love with her. Yeah, again, the dynamic is interesting there because Gideon is obviously pursuing Rune, but not for romantic reasons at this point. Even though he finds her attractive, that's not kind of his main mission. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that goes. I just think that the writing has been really good, the pacing has been great. I really love the character. I'm really rooting for Rune. You know, I think she's really tenacious, she's cunning, she's smart, and I think although she's smart, the plot line is showing her to fail, showing her to maybe do things without thinking and, you know, being outsmarted almost, and it's just on the tether of her getting caught, but then she always finds a way to get herself out of the situation. But yeah, I think so far this one's definitely been worth the hype. I think it's been a really fast-paced read. As I say, I'm around 50% in and I've only been reading it for a day, essentially. I'm listening along with the audio as well, which I would highly recommend. I think the narrator's doing a great job. But yeah, no, really, really enjoying it so far. So once I've read it a little bit more, I'll come back on and let you know my thoughts. But yeah, here's hoping it's going to continue to be as good. Okay, I've just finished The Crimson Moth and I cannot believe we have to wait for book 2 and we don't even know when it's going to be out because this is just released. That ending, oh my god, it was so good. I'll come back with some coherent thoughts when I'm a bit later after work, but so good. Worth the hype, 100%. Okay, so back to give a bit of an update on The Crimson Moth and kind of my final thoughts and feelings and how I think it went. But as you can probably tell from the previous clip, I really, really enjoyed it. The ending was explosive to say the least. Definitely a few twists and turns in there. Some I was kind of anticipating, but the way in which it was done was not the way I anticipated it was going to be. I didn't actually think of it, and I think that is kind of testament to this book. I mean, so to kind of give an overall feeling, I think the pacing was really good, the twists and turns were really good, the plot was really good. I really liked the FMC, so Rune, I was really rooting for her. I thought she was tenacious, she was cunning, she exhibited, you know, vulnerability as well in there. There was some past trauma, survivor's guilt almost in there as well, and that was a really interesting aspect of it. The MMC, so Gideon, really enjoyed his kind of perspective being in there as well, and I think it added a huge amount to the plot. And again with him, I think we got like a multi-layered kind of character development. We kind of got a lot of his past trauma, why he is the way he is, why he became a witch hunter, and again just that perspective made it all the more thrilling because it made the stakes even higher when it came to him and Rune potentially getting together. In terms of the story and the character building, it was all great. I've landed on a 4.5 because there are a few points that maybe made it. Well, firstly, I just didn't get that 5-star feeling. I think you get with a 5-star book, you just have a feeling. But while I didn't get that, I did find that I just wanted to pick this one up over the other reads that I'm currently reading at the moment. So I'd say in that aspect it was really good, but 4.5 because I feel like the world building was a little bit vague. I don't know if book 2 will expand on that or if we'll get a little bit more, but it didn't take away from the story, but I just would have liked a bit more of the world building. And then again, the love triangle was in there, I just didn't really care for. I don't really think it added much to the story. I think just the relationship between Gideon and Alex maybe would have been enough to kind of hold that, you know, high stakes. It's his brother, so it would have been enough to hold it in there. But again, didn't really take away from the story too much. But those are probably the only two aspects that I would say didn't really sit too well with me and kind of maybe knocked it down from that 5-star to a 4.5-star. But yeah, I mean, it's getting loads of hype and I can totally understand why. I think it was really well paced. It is down as YA, but I would say this is probably more in that new adult category. There was definitely some more descriptive spicy scenes, which is absolutely fine, but I think it just needs to be very clear that this probably isn't aimed at like that 12 to 18, you know, it's maybe more like 15 and above perhaps. I think people speculate on what age should be reading what, but yeah, I've definitely said it's maybe not for the younger audiences, and it's definitely in that more new adult category. But yeah, I mean, it's getting a lot of hype. It's definitely worth the hype, I would say. If you don't have this one on your TBR, definitely put it on there. I have actually just looked up, the second book has been announced and it will be out in February 2025, so bit of a long wait, but at least it's not a full year, so we'll be eagerly anticipating that book 2 coming out. Okay, just another quick update. As I'm finished The Crimson Moth, I'm trying to decide what to read next, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to pick up this one, So When the Moon Hatched. I seen Coffee and Tales. I'll link her channel below, but she was talking about The Crimson Moth and this one in the same vlog, and she said that this one was an absolute must read. So I think I'm going to pick this one up next. So as soon as I've read a bit more, I'll let you know. Not sure if I'll get much reading done tonight. I'm just about to go out and have some dinner with friends. So by the time I get home and see my husband and stuff and have a bit of a chill out time, I might not get too much time for reading, but hoping to maybe at least start this before bed tonight, depending on, as I say, how late it is. I do think it's one where you have to concentrate. I think there's quite a lot of world building. I'm not really 100% sure on the premise, because if you look, the synopsis on the back is quite long, so I haven't read it in full yet, but I've just heard that there's dragons, it's quite a good romantasy, but there's a lot of plot in there as well, and that the magic system's really well thought out. So yeah, excited to get to this one. Reading update for When the Moon Hatched. So I'm only about 5% into this, and so far so good. I'm really enjoying the writing style. It's a very pretty writing style, and I've actually tabbed a few like quotes and things like that so far. But yeah, I think I can definitely attest with this one. I had been forewarned that the world building in here is pretty dense, and you do have to kind of concentrate in the first few chapters just to establish yourself in this world, because it is quite a unique one that Sarah A. Parker is building. So the premise of it is basically it's a world that's built off these 5 creators who are essentially gods within this world, and one is a god of wind, one is of ground, so earth essentially, water, fire and ether. And when those creators are working in harmony, everything is kind of great for the land. And essentially within this land there are dragons, and the dragons, when they die, basically what happens to their bodies is they sail up to the sky and they turn into tombstones, which are seen as moons from this world. And again, when the creators are all working in harmony, these moons stay up there, they kind of help with the magic and everything is fine. But essentially within the creators circle, one of them kind of goes adrift for one reason or another, and when that happens, the moons from the sky start to fall and it causes havoc within the world. So the other 4 creators who are working together, so it's the god of ether, who's the one that goes off on his own. So the other 4 concoct a plan to trap him within a gem, so it's basically an onyx stone, and the keeper of that onyx stone will be a powerful Fae warrior of the land. And essentially that's kind of what we get in the background. So they capture Celius, he's put into the stone, and then from that point kind of the world is peaceful again until 5 million of what they call phases, which is basically akin to our year, passes, and then suddenly one of the moons falls from the sky. So that's kind of the background we get in how this world is built up and kind of the lore that there is in this world. I will say again, as I said before, that the world building is quite intense. I think there's a glossary in here, and I think it's around 10 pages long, and it just gives us, things of age and time explained, creatures, characters, cities, you know, regions and things like that. There's quite a lot in here, so it's actually going to, I think, be really, really helpful just to kind of go back and go, okay, you know, what does this mean again, or what was that creature? It might sound like it's a lot of work, but so far it hasn't been very info dumpy or anything like that. In terms of where we are in the current plot, we start off with our main protagonist, Riva, and she's basically part of this rebellion group called the Fyr du Af. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but basically it's her job to, she's kind of like an assassin, and she will get jobs to kill usually like bad people within the realm, rapists, child abusers, things like that. So I would also say there is a list of trigger warnings just that you might want to look up for this, and it probably encompasses some of those topics as well. But so far we've met her, she's on a job, and essentially she's trying to track down this bad person and kill him, and that's kind of where I've got to so far. Oh, and I should mention that within this land we are kind of revolving around Fae, and the way that their power works is that they have elemental power, but it's taken from those creators, so those gods. So they may have, you know, ether, elemental power, water, air, or whatever it may be. And the way that you're kind of signified in the Fae world as having a power is you'll wear beads of a certain colour. So I think it does say it in the glossary, but I believe fire is red beads, water is blue beads, and things like that. But if you're a Fae who doesn't have a calling to those powers, so the way that you can distinguish if you have them is you'll hear the song of that creator. If you don't have that, you will be what is known as a null, and essentially you'll be distinguished by, in some regions, a clip in your ear to kind of show that you're a lesser than Fae, you don't have power. And yeah, so we found out that Riva at the start, she has an affinity for air, and that's the creator that she hears the song of, and she uses that within her job as well. And yeah, I think so far I'm really enjoying the characterization of her. I think there is going to be a lot of past trauma just from some of the like little snippets and sentences that have been put in there, but I'm only 5% in, so in terms of the plot, I'm not really too far into it. I don't want to read too far on the back of the synopsis in case it kind of gives away some of the plot, because it is quite a long synopsis, and I find sometimes with books it ends up giving away some major plot points. I do want to kind of be surprised and go into this a little bit blind, but I'll keep you updated as I read a bit more on and as I get a bit more understanding of this world and where the plot is going to go. But so far I'm just really impressed by the uniqueness of the story. I think the Fae storytelling is quite a saturated market right now, you know, and I mean, I've probably read most of them. I do really enjoy them. It doesn't really matter to me if they're not too unique. But this one, I think it's a really unique magic system that I haven't seen before, or at least a unique way of approaching it. And as I say, she's kind of taken our world, and days run slightly different and years run slightly different, and the phases of the moons and things like that all run slightly differently. So I'm really, really intrigued to see where this goes. I've heard nothing but great things. So hopefully it's so far so good, and hopefully it continues in that way. I did also start Flawless by Elsie Silver, so I'm doing it via audiobook because with romances and things like that, I do actually just prefer to consume them in that way. I think they're a great intro to audiobooks, so if you've never listened to an audiobook before, something like a romance is usually a good way to go because it's not too convoluted, there's not too many details to take in, so it does give you a good kind of entry point into that. But yeah, in terms of Flawless, it's the Chestnut Springs series, so again, it's one of those BookTok raved about series that everyone seems to love. Everyone's in their cowboy era, so I wanted to get in on the action. So I've started reading with Flawless. I'm only about 7% into that, 7 to 10% in, but it's kind of setting up for a reluctant forced proximity story, which I really, really enjoy. So we're following our main female protagonist is a girl called Summer. Basically, she is the daughter of a talent agent who works with the cowboys and I suppose they're called bull riders. I'm not really too sure, but her father is a talent agent for a really famous bull rider called Rhett Easton, I believe. So he's basically really famous. He does really well in shows, multi-million-dollar, you know, enterprise. But essentially in the last few months, he's got himself into some trouble by basically bad-mouthing one of his main sponsors, which is a milk production company, essentially just by saying he doesn't like drinking milk. So he's got himself in a bit of hot water. He needs to kind of repair his image so that he can recoup some of those sponsorships and make sure that he doesn't lose any of his other sponsorships as well. So Summer's father decides that the best way to do that is to put someone kind of with him as a shadow, and lo and behold, Summer is the best person for the job. So she's going to kind of babysit him, shadow him, give him tips and tricks of how to turn around his perception, ensure that he's not getting into any more trouble. And I'm guessing the story is going to go from there in terms of there's going to be some angst, there's going to be some differences of opinion, there's going to be some rivalries, and then the forced proximity is going to come in, and I'm guessing that's where the romance will come in. But so far so good. It's meeting my expectations for what I thought it was going to be, so I'm liking the writing, I think you're getting a bit of a story here in terms of why he does the bull riding. He's a little bit of an older protagonist, which I really enjoy. You know, a lot of these stories tend to follow maybe 21, 22-year-olds. He's said to be 32. Not too sure what age Summer's supposed to be, but it kind of said her teenage years and then a decade later, so I'm guessing she's around the mid-20s age. But yeah, so far so good. Again, only about 10% into it, so not too far to kind of judge it, but I'll let you know my thoughts when I've read a bit more. So it's been a couple of days since I've done an update. Basically the weekend was just really good weather, so I was pretty much just reading out the back or going for nice walks and things like that. So yeah, I haven't done an update in a couple of days, but just wanted to give you some reading updates. I think the last time we were chatting I had just started Flawless by Elsie Silver, and I was just starting When the Moon Hatched as well. So I'll start with Flawless. So I did finish it basically in a day. It was so good, and I don't know, I wasn't really expecting to absolutely love it because contemporary romance isn't really my go-to genre. I do enjoy it, but it's not one that I jump to. Usually I much more prefer fantasy romance or fantasy and things like that. So I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I absolutely loved it. I devoured it within a day. I would say right off the bat the humour was really good in there, so the banter. Sometimes in contemporary romance I can find the banter a little bit cringy, and I think that's what puts me off it sometimes, but with this one I thought it was really good. I really loved the sibling dynamic between the, I think I called them Easton before, but it's Eaton. I really loved the brothers dynamic with each other, you know, constantly kind of making fun of each other and constantly, you know, teasing each other. And I have 3 older brothers myself, and I definitely resonated with that dynamic and that sibling rivalry. Really good, really relatable. I think it was a really fast paced read, really easy to kind of relate with the main character. I really enjoyed her character, the main FMC. She was, again, she wasn't very annoying or anything like that. She wasn't very cringy, and the MMC also was, you know, the same. So yeah, I would just say that with that one it was a really fun read, really interesting read. I've already downloaded book 2, if that says anything about my enjoyment, and I'm really looking forward to starting that. I might start it actually this week. So yeah, definitely recommend those ones. And then as for When the Moon Hatched, so by Sarah A. Parker, this one, my god, is it worth the hype? I'm about 80% in. I've got this much left, which I'll probably finish today, but this has just been amazing. In a word, basically amazing. I don't want to tell, actually. I think I gave a little bit of what the premise was in my last clip, and I'm not going to give much more because I went into this kind of blind. I didn't really read the whole synopsis because, as you can see, it is quite long, and I went into it blind, and I honestly think that's been a great way to discover this book and to read this book. But I will read the little tagline at the back. I think just sums it up perfectly. It says, "When the Moon Hatched is a fast-paced fantasy romance for fans of witty banter and strong, sassy protagonists. Beneath the cover is an immersive, vibrant world with mysterious creatures, a unique magic system, and love that blazes through the ages." And I honestly think that just encompasses everything I've loved about this book. I think the writing style has been beautiful. I would say it kind of leans toward that purple prose and a bit more flowery, so just be wary of that. I know not everybody loves that. I personally adore it. I really love it. And in terms of the world building and the characters, I do think the world building in here has been pretty unique, even just with the little details of changing little details of what a day is, what a night is, and just things like that. I think it's so imaginative what Sarah A. Parker has done here, and even though it is kind of said to be a romantasy, I would definitely say if you are interested in maybe transitioning from romantasy to maybe more high fantasy, this is a good kind of bridge book to that, because it does have a bit more political intrigue. There is a bit more dense world building than you sometimes see in kind of more romance heavy romantasies. So I would definitely say this is a good one for that. But yeah, I just think, I mean, I haven't finished it yet, and I'm kind of saying it's a 5-star book, but unless something goes terribly wrong within this last kind of 20%, I'm just getting the 5-star feels from this one. So really excited to finish it, really excited to see where it goes. I feel like there's going to be a cliffhanger that's going to kill me, and God knows when the next book is coming out, but I knew that before going into it. I'll probably give you a bit more of an update tomorrow. I do think I'll finish this tonight, but I'll do a roundup tomorrow. As you can probably see, the sun's shining in my window, so I'm just going to go for a bit of a walk, do a bit of audiobook reading of this one. I think there's about an hour and a half left, so I should finish this tonight. But yeah, I'll come back tomorrow with all my final thoughts and a roundup. Hey all, channel. Just jumping on to round up the vlog for this week. So just to wrap up my final thoughts and kind of my ratings for the books that I read this week. Crimson Moth, I won't say too much more. I really enjoyed it. There were a few little aspects that didn't really hit right for me, so I landed on around a 4.5, but definitely recommend that one. It was a really fast, fun read. Then we had Flawless by Elsie Silver, and let's just say I'm in my cowboy era because I've already moved on to book 3. So I read book 2 and I'm now in book 3, and I'm absolutely loving them. I think they're really fun contemporary romances. If you like kind of 2000s rom-coms and things like that, I think you'll love these as well. And then When the Moon Hatched, I did finish it as well, and it was absolutely 5-star. Really enjoyed it. Couldn't recommend it more. If you like fantasy romance, that's definitely one to pick up. But yeah, that's everything for this week. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you've read any of these books, please do let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts and any recommendations for anything that's similar. If you do like this video, please do remember to give it a like and subscribe. I'd love to have you as part of this little community I'm building. But yeah, other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!